Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. I've got a co-captain in the chair today helping me out on this review. We've got Luis Nasser from In the Prague Seed. You've also seen him on the Hudson Valley Squares from time to time. And we're both really into this new album, and I think we both have a lot to say about it. So I figure let's have Luis help us out here. We're going to review today the brand new Between the Buried and Me CD called Colors Part 2. Colors 2, yes. And you know, it's funny, they give you this little, the one, I don't know if you got this too, but mine's got this little slipcase, and it's got the, you know, the two here.
Oh, yours broke?
Yeah. But it broke like already.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm looking at it today, I'm like, well, that kind of sucks, you know, but yeah, anyway, just before we get started talking about it, I'll kind of do a little show and tell here. So you take the slipcase off there. Of course, you have a little ode to the original album there. All sorts of interesting art things going on there, and of course the booklet with lyrics. If I remember correctly, no pictures of the guys here. They generally don't do that on most of their CDs, if I remember correctly.
That's right. It's just text and
no pictures of the guys. But do you really need it? I don't know. Whatever. They're not like they're the most good-looking band on the planet, right? They're just a bunch of dudes. They wear hoodies like I'm wearing. Half of them got beards and whatever, you know. They're just a bunch of dudes, right? So, but yeah, so this is a sequel. You know what? I could not believe that it had already been 14 years since the first one.
Almost 15, right? Because it was 2007, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
And you know, I don't know about you, if you had heard, I had no inclination that they were doing this. This just kind of like appeared. And, you know, like a month or two before, you heard that they were coming out with the sequel, and, you know, kind of no fanfare. And I mean, we were just talking before we started recording that this is like a really long album. It's like, what, just about 80 minutes? I think
More than that. Yeah, but it's no breaks. It's just none.
I mean, you talk about
Colors, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the Colors was long too, not quite as long as this, but this uses up every possible second that you could use on a compact disc. And, you know, quite frankly, this follows, you know, they've been doing nothing but these like concept things over the last decade too, right? So you had Automata 1 and 2, you had the Parallax stuff.
Yes.
You had Coma Ecliptica. I mean, you know, all this really dense concept works. That's kind of what they've been doing since the first Colors. And I did some reading today. Some of the guys in the band were talking about this, comparing it to when they released Colors. And Colors, they kind of put out because they were kind of at a point in their career where they needed to kind of like put up or shut up. You know, they released Alaska, which was the kind of the big break for them. But then they're like, all right, we can't keep kind of doing that. We've got to do something a little different that's going to allow us to do what we really want to do deep down inside. And Colors was the big breakthrough for them. And since then, they've done even more complex, dense things. And now they came to this, and this basically came about as, all right, we're in COVID, we can't tour. What the hell else are we going to do? Let's just do something that'll make us feel like we're doing something, right? And here we have this. So your first impressions on this album?
Well, my first impression, I didn't even know it was coming. So the way that I learned about it, I always like to take walks to my local record store because I'm lucky that we still have one of those.
Yeah. Right.
And I walked in and I'm just looking around, and right in front of my face is Between the Buried and Me, Colors 2. And my first impression is, oh no, this can't be good, right? That was my first thought. But of course, I picked it up. And I brought it home and I stared at it for a few days, and then I finally threw it in. And I was impressed by how good the music writing was on this record. I think that especially in that era that you talked about in between the first one and the second one, I thought The Great Misdirect was incredible.
Yeah, that might be my favorite out of all.
Yeah, but then they started to sort of try to just throw everything and the kitchen sink. And it started to get to a point where it was just too much for the sake of just showing that you could do it.
In my opinion, dazzling musically,
Yeah,
but hard to digest.
exactly. There was, they didn't have the same, melodic threads that they had in some previous records. So I've always been a fan, and I never miss a chance to see them live when they come by, but when I first played this record, I was just surprised by the clarity of the music and the way that it's not really colors part two, in the sense that, okay, we're just going to continue a story. Although the lyrics do have that, that clash between the monochromacity of acceptance and just being a consumer, and the complexity of life, and the subtleties, and the the chromacity actually of what it takes to live in this world, and be compliant with sustainability and other things, which I always liked that message from the original one. But then I started to realize that they're not really playing those, they're not using many of those themes at all.
Right.
They barely quote some lyrics and some ideas. And they do have, for example, the closer is kind of like White Waltz, human as hell.
Yep.
They do have some things like that in common, but this is fresh. And to my ears, at least, they really, really were able to decouple, where they can go thick and it works and it's beautiful, but they can also create a lot of space in the music. And there are parts that for reference that you can say, well, that's a little Gentle Giantish, or that's a little Tullish, there's little things, just because that's what it reminds you of, because that's the first thing you heard. I'm not saying I don't know what they were thinking. I have no idea, but at the same time, it's just such a fresh take on their sound. And then they have like little gypsy jazz interludes.
Yeah.
They have just really cool things. So I fell in love with it immediately, and I've been listening to it pretty much daily since I finally put it on the player. Right, I love it. I absolutely love this record.
Yeah, and you have to like kind of pay attention to it. Like I find like, and maybe it's just this band in general, I can't put them on in the background and just kind of like let it go. I have to like listen to it start to finish. It's not background music, because some of their music is really harsh, and like to me, like I work from home, so I often play music in the background while I'm working, and this isn't a band for that. No. This is a band you go work out at the gym to, or you crank in the car, or you're cooking dinner in the kitchen. You want to fire something up that's going to get you through the whole thing. I don't play these guys for background music. And I think it's just the nature of their music, because it's so dissonant and loud and aggressive and quiet. And I mean, they got like carnival shit going on in their music from time to time. Yes. You know what they remind me of? They're almost like today's like Mr. Bungle, Faith No More in a way, because they've kind of got that herky jerky. We're going to go here. We're going to go there. We're going to go down here. We're going to go up there. Right. 5 times in every song type of thing.
Yes. I actually am grateful for that, because it's
different, right?
And I'm, my way of thinking about music is that I hate putting music in the background. For me, I just like to carve a part of the day where I'm just going to listen to music.
Yeah.
And I of course, I also put it in the background because it's playing all the time. But this is a record that reminds me of the days when I was a teenager, and I would sit and I would just listen with headphones to an album. Right. It was a ritual thing. It was all us old people. We had that, right? Music wasn't sonic wallpaper. It was like you had to have the LP player, right?
Yeah.
And
you had to have the time to do it, right? I mean,
and it's such a rewarding experience. It's like reading a book. It's they don't package it for convenience, and that's something that I'm also very grateful for, because it's not intended for that. Yeah. But if you actually give it the time, upon repeated listens, it really reveals a lot of depth. I mean, there's even that one song. What's it called? Fix the Error. Where I don't know that I can't be sure of this, because I'm listening, but I'm not really reading too much. But it sounds like Mike Portnoy plays on it for a bit, and then there's it sounds like he's playing on it, like he's a guest in the drums, and then there's another drummer there who also sounds like the guy who plays with Animals as Leaders. But it's just such a such an incredible tune, right? That these guys come and go, and it's normal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I'm
Well,
pretty
I'm
sure.
looking at the credits. I'm looking at the credits right now. You were absolutely correct.
Right.
Fix the error.
I think there may be a third drummer, or maybe this
Yes.
is the
So
normal drummer.
Mike Portnoy is on
Yeah.
it. Naveen Copperweiss from
From
Entheos
Animals
is
of
on it.
Leaders.
And Ken Schalk from Candiria is also on it.
I don't know that drummer, but you know, as a bass player, I'm just always keyed into the drums, and I realize, oh, that's different. That's not Blake, right? This is a different guy.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing experience to just suddenly it comes out like it's just ear candy for me, right?
Yeah.
And that song in particular even has like a sort of a punky edge to it. I guess I could describe it like that. It's a little. It's just surprising the range of styles that they were able to cohesively present. I really I was much more impressed by it than I thought I would be.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of flavors on here. I mean, like I mentioned before, they kind of go here, there, and everywhere, nonstop throughout the album. So you can have one song is like gorgeous melodic prog, where Tommy Rogers is just crooning. He's got a really good, clean vocal style. There's other songs that are like crazy screaming metalcore with really complex Dream Theater-ish riffs and solos. I mean, you got these two guitar players, Dusty and Paul. Really great players.
And Dan Riggs on bass.
Dan is amazing. Great bass player. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I tend to think of him now as the master of the filter. He's found that sweet spot where he's just playing with filters, and he's also playing with Moogs on stage. So he has that, he's just amazing. I love that guy. I think he's very underrated. He's great. I love everything about this record. Yeah. The only thing that I wasn't, after repeated listens, right? The only thing for me, which is odd because I tend to prefer instrumentals, but it's Fumato. It's kind of this short little thing that kind of breaks the flow. I don't really understand it. There's nothing objectionable about it, right? I just it seems after really living with it that it doesn't quite propel. It's like a little roadblock in where they were taking you.
Yeah, I guess the way I look at it is that's this little brief moment of kind of clarity before they hit you with Human as Hell. Right. Because that's 15-minute juggernaut. There's no break in that song whatsoever. It's just
no. But it does have those very sweet 9/4 melodic breaks, right? The sort of epic chorusy things. Like they do, it's very well put together, right? It's just you know what we are. I'm just picking on a very minute thing because there's absolutely nothing wrong with Fumato. I'm just saying, given how amazing this album hangs together and how it propels you in all these different directions, I just suddenly started questioning when that song came up that it was actually getting in the way of my enjoyment rather than, but that's such a subjective thing anyway. I love this record. I'm glad they took the time to really challenge themselves and write something that is not meant to be for easy listening or consumption.
Yeah.
I don't know. I had an impression years ago that these guys were, when Dream Theater were having their kind of decline and their issues, these dudes were sort of poised to be the next Dream Theater in a way, right? But then they sort of hit a ceiling, and that never quite happened. They, for whatever reason, they just got saturated. And I view this record as not necessarily as a continuation, but more as a love letter to the first, as a way of saying, we once were in this situation before, like you said, and we need to really show just what we're capable of doing. And I love it when bands take that upon themselves, because that's really what it's supposed to be about. You're supposed to be trying your best every time. And the business of living gets in the way of that. But they had an opportunity, so it's great.
Yeah, I think thank God it's not Operation Mindcrime 2.
Oh.
Which I think, most people were probably, I was probably like, all right, probably didn't need to go and do a sequel, but we'll see how this is, because we've seen other things like this not turn out well.
Yes.
This is because it's, yeah, I mean, you hear very, very minute things. Like I think the big closing epic is not really similar, but it has a similar impact. I think they did a really good
Yes.
job, I think, of making Human as Hell as impactful as White Walls and hitting certain crescendos, which that song did, but they don't sound alike, if that makes any
Yes.
sense at all.
I
Like,
agree with you 100%.
yeah.
Yes.
And there's some, you know, one of the things I love about this man is I love the riffing these guys come up with, and they make it complex, but not too over the top where you just can't, it doesn't penetrate you. You know, the riffs, you feel them down
Yes.
inside, and they're just, I love it. And I love the way he goes back and forth between the clean vocals and the kind of the
Yes.
harsh, growling, screaming vocals. And I think it works. And, you know, and then they throw in these weird ass carnival things from time to time, which is, I think, what makes this band so unique, because it's just so odd, but it works. Yeah, I mean, this is a good album.
I absolutely love it. Like it begins with that the monochrome, which is kind of like Muse sounding, I guess, for lack of a reference.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, like their mission statement,
Yeah.
right? The double helix of extinction.
Yeah.
Where they even in the lyrics they reference between the buried and me. Right. This is like, all right, here we go. This is what we're fucking about.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't let up. You know, it's an incredible accomplishment. I think that the guy should be proud. They did an amazing thing from my view, and I love every second of this record.
And I will urge everybody, it is long, so be prepared to sit down and kind of let this soak in. And you're probably not going to get all the riches out of this album from the first listen or two. It's going to take probably 4, 5, 6 times before you're like, all right, now I can kind of see the whole pattern of what's going on here. Because you're going to get, there's certain tracks that stick out a little bit that are like, all right, these are something like Prehistory is fantastic. Human as Hell is epic, big, heavy, gargantuan. Monochrome is great. Fix the Error, you know, Double Helix of Extinction. These are all really strong tracks, but like Lewis mentioned earlier, the whole album just kind of plows one track to the other. There's no breaks. It's just boom, 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 boom. And you just got to be in for the ride. And that ride is going to go, it's like a roller coaster. It goes up and down, all over the place, sideways, around, upside down. And that's just the way it is.
I would love to be back on the East Coast just so I could take a long road trip and just play it. You know, just do like the drive from Baltimore to Boston and just play it and just enjoy it, especially now in the fall. It'd be awesome because it's just such a great record that it lends itself for that kind of an environment on the highway. So you're gonna be sure you don't get a ticket because you're gonna be.
Well, yeah, you put something like this on the car, you're gonna be pedal to the metal quite a bit. So yeah, absolutely.
But I love this record, and I'm so happy that the guys did it because they really silenced a lot of critics, I think, who were like, well, you know, I didn't like Automata as much, or I didn't like the other thing, or you know, they're too this, too that, and suddenly they said, no, let me just show you what we're actually about.
Yeah.
And they delivered. They just, it's amazing. I love this record.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because I talk all the time, and you and I have had this conversation. We've talked about it on the prog seat and whatnot. We talk about a lot of bands seem to do like 65, 70, 75, 80-minute long albums just because they can. And the end result is like, all right, more music than we need. 3, 4 songs are kind of filler, blah, blah, blah. And I've actually criticized this band for releasing these like basically concept albums that they decide to split into 2 shorter pieces instead of releasing it as one album. So they'll put one out 1 month, they'll release the second part the next month, and they both kind of belong together. You got to wait for the second half. And I've criticized them for that. But yet I criticize bands all the time for doing these big long albums that shouldn't be as long. Well, you know what? This is as long as it needs to be, and it should be. Exactly. Right. And I don't say that all the time. It's very rare that I talk about a 75+ minute CD and I'm like, you know, this is a perfect length. This is exactly what it needs to be. I think it's one of the rare ones, I think, in recent memory.
I agree with that also. I think the CDs really appended that concept of what an album should be there because I mean, people have a finite attention span also, right?
Yeah.
So the whole point of the album is that it's a group that works as a unit, in my mind anyway. So you have to be damn sure that you have one hell of a group if you're going to be making it that long.
Yeah. Plus tracks that all are meant to be together, not 70 minutes of all these disconnected pieces of music that were never meant to be together, right? That's right. A totally different thing. Yeah.
That's right. So you have to compose it for the album as opposed to let's just write some songs and stick them together,
Right.
I love this is why I love this record so much. It's very clear that there was a lot of effort invested in that, in making sure that this was a continuous cycle of music. And that once you get it in your head and you let your brain do the math, then you can really appreciate all the shapes, right? All of what's happening. It's a beautiful feeling, at least for me, when I have the opportunity to actually listen to a record and let it reveal itself the way this one does, because it's better than magic because it's real,
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Good stuff. So if I were to rate this, because I usually, I'm eventually going to review this on the website, generally 0 to 5, 5 being perfect. I'm pretty sure I gave Colors a 5 out of 5 star way back when. I haven't had this long enough to say that yet, so I'm going to go 4.5 out of 5 for now.
That's fair.
I think that's fair, right? I think 4 is, I think I like it more than that.
Yes, it has to be a 4.5, only because it's so fresh still.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we let it stew in their body of work to then fully appreciate it. But this is the best thing that I've heard, the best new album I've heard all year long. For me, this is, I just got the Mastodon, which I'm really digging.
I should have that any day, yeah.
And but the thing with this one also, I know that we diverge there, but I do pay a lot of attention to the lyrics. And I really like what they're saying. It really adds to the, to the message that is conveyed by the notes. The moods are coherent with the language. So that's always been a thing for me. I dislike it when there's this epic sounding, minor cadence and the lyrics are about chicks and cars, It's just like, come on, man. Don't do this to me. You're killing me.
Give me something a little heavier than that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, congruency. Let's make it consistent. But this is great. I love this record for that reason as well. I think the lyrics are abstract enough that you don't have to be weighed down by a narrative or okay, this is happening now. This is not sequential. These are just ideas that interlock, observations of multiple aspects of how we live and how we could possibly do it better. I love that. It adds, it doesn't subtract, it only adds. And for people who want to take the time, I think a really fun exercise now that I've had it for a while is to actually map out the parts that coexist in both albums. Right. And if you're a huge music nerd like me, then you can actually play some mind games and realize, they shifted this by half step, this, it's a lot of fun. So I just love doing these things because this is who I am. But it will reward you. If you're a music nerd, you're going to dig it, I think, without exception.
Yeah. So for those of you watching who haven't listened to this band before, you have to have a little patience with the more extreme vocals, right? So probably 60% of the album is the harsh kind of, and they're not death metal growls. They're more kind of like the metalcore, hardcore, screamy type things, right? And that's not death metal growls.
Yeah.
So, but it's for the uninitiated, it might make their music a little, kind of frightening at first, but the music is absolutely splendid. You've got some gorgeous prog rock going on here. You got some sledgehammer heavy metal going on here, real complex arrangements, nice keyboards, fantastic guitar playing, the drums, the bass. Musically, it's phenomenal. So you just got, you got a little give and take between the harsh vocals and the melodic vocals. That's
my anecdotal evidence is my wife doesn't really like death growls, but she actually really likes this record. So we play it and she is happy when I play it. There's always that look, right? There's that moment when she's like, what the fuck is this? but not with this one. She actually genuinely enjoys it. So I know it's anecdotal evidence, but it's still powerful because she doesn't like the death growls at all, right? If I start playing Meshuggah, she is unhappy. But but she's quite content with this one. So there is a lot of variety.
Yeah.
And if you just treat the rougher vocals as a texture instead of as a, the vocal shouldn't sound like that. It's kind of like the same thing you would say to a guitar. Well, it's not a clean tone, but it's just a different harmonic content, and it gives it a different volume and a different projection, and it works. And like you said, that's a very important thing. It's not that harsh. It just has that propulsion and that anger, but it's not
abrasive. Yeah, it's a little.
Yeah, but it's not low, and it's not intended to kind of drill into your ears. So it's very nice. I love it.
Yeah. So there you have it, everybody. Between the Buried and Me, Colors 2, out now on, what is this, on Sumerian Records, I believe?
Yes, Sumerian
Records. So go check it out. Give it a listen if you're a little unsure. But if you are a fan of the band and you haven't heard this yet, go out and grab it. You won't regret it.
You could hardly start in the worst place, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This is awesome. I love this record.
Cool. Well, I want to thank Louis for jumping on board to help out with this review tonight. Much appreciated, Louis. And see Louis once again in the Prague seat on Tuesday nights. We got another good topic coming for you next week, so stay tuned for that. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Stay tuned. We got tomorrow coming up, The Monsters Den, Chris Allo once again back in the house. We're going to talk about, we're going to recap Chiller Theater from last weekend and give you a little preview of what we're going to be doing this coming weekend at the Exhumed 24-hour Horror Fest in Pennsylvania. So stay tuned for that. Martin Popoff back Friday morning. And then we've got album homework assignment on Sunday. We've got, who's coming up Sunday? We got Chuck Alvarez going head to head with Christian Canzoneri. So that's happening on Sunday. So you don't want to miss it. So take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. For Luis Nasser, I am Pete Pardo. Go out and listen to Colors 2, and we'll see you real soon. Take care.